Hello, and welcome to the Student Experience podcast, where we will be chatting to members of the University of Suffolk community, giving them the opportunity to share their experience with us. I'm Sam, and I'm a member of the Student Experience team, and in today's episode, we're joined by Emily Ruegg and Rachel Housego, who are the Midwifery course leaders. We discussed the 2 midwifery courses available at the university, opportunities for students after graduating, and their journeys to becoming lecturers. Emily and Rachel, thanks for joining us today. Would you like to firstly introduce yourselves?
Do you want to go first?
Okay, yeah, I'm Emily Ruegg and I'm a midwife and a senior lecturer at University of Suffolk.
And I am Rachel Housego. I'm also a midwife and I'm a senior lecturer at University of Suffolk. I'm the course lead for the Midwifery long course.
And I'm for the short course.
Lovely. So we'll have a bit of a chat about the courses. So maybe if you could firstly give an overview of how the courses look from when their student starts through to when they finish.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, can do. Yeah.
Just throw you under there.
Yeah, thank you. So I will talk about the shortened course, which is a 2-year programme, which is postgrad. So you start off as a registered nurse. It has to be that you're a registered adult nurse. Unfortunately, you can't be a child's nurse or learning disability nurse, mental health. You have to be registered as an adult nurse and have been working for at least 6 months before you apply. It's the same start. We start in September, but we recruit slightly different. So it's not through UCAS. It's through NHS jobs. So you, because you're an employee, so you apply like that, and then you are interviewed by the trust and by one of us in an interview panel, which is really different for obviously what we have at the moment for the long course. And then you kind of know straight away, and then we've had really short turnaround, like particularly this year, where you can then literally in 6 weeks be on the course and starting, which is obviously slightly different to what the long course is. And then you're paid midpoint band 5 as band 5 nursing wage all the way through, so you don't have any student loans or anything. You can apply for some loans if you wanted to, just to kind of top up your salary, because you don't get like antisocial hours and stuff, enhancements that you do as a nurse. And yeah, so it's a condensed course. You don't have level 4, you go straight into level 5 and then level 6. So it can be quite challenging for some students, but usually they've done a degree before, so they are okay. But some have only done a diploma, so do find that leap quite challenging sometimes. But we give a lot of support in the early days to kind of help with that. And yes, we've condensed some of the modules down for those levels, so you don't do all of the ones that the long course do. You don't, things like A&P, which is you'd expect if they're nurses, they've got a bit of understanding already. What the other ones? DSM, which is developing student midwives. So they're already practitioners, because that's a lot about women's lives. Yeah, that's a bit about public health. So things that they're not getting, but a lot of them are the same. And some of the modules are co-taught with the long course to help, because their cohort's really small. The shortened course, we've only got 12 at the moment, so they're quite a small cohort. So they get to merge with the long course to try and collaborate with their learning, and it's we collaborate as module leads. All the placements are the same. They have same blocks of placements, and they have 3 blocks of placements each year, and they've got the same level of competencies and proficiencies at the long course, but again in 2 years. So it is quite challenging, but it's a really great course. I really love it. We are hoping to progress it to a master's course in the future, so that we can do level 6 and level 7 together. So because if they've got a degree already before, they can then have a master's as well as a degree. I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell. That's a very condensed.
It was a nice summary,
but there's a lot of overlap apart from the kind of recruitment part of it.
There is a lot of merge, and a lot of the lectures that are in the long, that you might not be doing the module like Women's Life, but some of those lectures are in the other modules. So they do get. We've covered the same. It's the same curriculum. It's just kind of spread in a different way, because obviously we've got the standards of proficiency that
interweave throughout the whole curriculum. It's just in different places.
And they use block as well, don't you?
Yeah.
So they go out they do modules, then practice. And then as they're doing a module, the assessment shortly after, it means you're not learning multiple things at one time, really.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really unique to the University of Suffolk, isn't it? The block learning approach.
Yeah. And our students do like it. Sometimes it is because, unfortunately, the way that our block works, we always have a skills module that runs all the way through the year. So then they end up having 2 block assessments at the end of the year, which is
controversial at the time.
It's challenging.
But actually you've had all year to practice it, and it's stuff you consolidate in clinical practice. So hopefully it doesn't bombard you too much at the end of the year. But obviously uni can be a bit stressful at times. But I think it's as well managed as that could be.
Yeah, I don't think you could do it any other way. But yeah, just how it works, it ends up being a bit of a. At the moment, this is our assessment stress period because we've got 2 cohorts at the moment. The old cohort that starts in January, and then we've now converted, so all of our cohorts start in September. Yeah. So at the moment we've got 2.
It is fantastic, but it's meant that between January and December every year is like.
It's not on down. And other lecturers are like, oh, everyone's winding down.
You're like, there's no wind down.
No, we have no wind down.
But in a couple of years it'll be fine. But no, it was better. It was meant for student experience because our long course used to start in January. It impacts things like finance. They miss out on Freshers Week. They miss out on all the kind of the graduation was difficult, all those elements. So we moved it to September to improve student experience. And I think it has generally improved student experience. It's just funny because we have 2 cohorts that are January intakes, 2 that are September. So we technically have an extra cohort between September and January. And all of them have their exams this time of year. So everything's
I have noticed this year, in previous years, I hadn't heard a lot of the students talk about Freshers Week, but this year
they did engage.
There was a much more greater buzz around it, and I heard like, "Oh, I'm feeling tired because I was out doing this with Freshers." I was like, "Oh, that's nice." Whereas the year before, I don't know if it's it was still kind of finding its fitting. I think like as a university, feels like there's lots more going on.
We are such a young university, and I think sometimes we forget that as. Perhaps from a professional and lecturer side of things, we forget that we come from our experiences, and we are still developing things like Freshers and the Student Union, but they have established themselves so well, and it's really exciting. And I think the word on campus at the moment is buzz all the time in everything, but that's really, really promising, and it's really positive to hear as well.
Because it's something that we've said for a while that it's lacking some time, like the like hustle and bustle and activities going on, but it feels like it's definitely. We've only been here for 3 and a bit years.
You've been here. I've been here 3. You 3 and a bit.
Yeah. So in that time, it has definitely grown.
There is more of a sense of community, I think, than there was when I first started for students.
Yes.
Yeah, I do think that's changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell about the long course.
Oh yeah,
I've done my
the question. The long course is an undergraduate course, and it is 3 years long. It is designed at anyone who wants to enter into midwifery, fundamentally. Although we do have people going to different careers that relate to women's health, public health. There's loads of scope with it. I'll talk about that later. The course itself starts at level 4, and level 4 is very much to do with the basics, the underpinning kind of physiology of pregnancy, the role of the midwife. You're very much fundamentals of midwifery. So that year is really good because it just starts to give you the information. And obviously our course runs in a way that we do blocks. So we have a couple of modules, and then our students are out in practice within 8 weeks. So quite early on in the course. Other courses, they're out a lot later. In ours, they are out quite quickly. But I think that what that does is, although it is a bit quick, an initiation by fire almost, actually sets that they're ready to go out into practice as soon as they start the course, because that's what they want to do. So it does have quite a good grounding in practice. And then so they kind of do the underpinning principles. That includes things like DSM, which is our developing the student midwife, which is all to do with the role of the midwife, but also your role as a student, your scope of practice. They have A&P, so their anatomy and physiology module, which is all anatomy and physiology generally, but then also linked to maternity, midwifery, pregnant people. You've got care of the newborn, which is all linked to breastfeeding and the postnatal period, and continuum, which is all to do with the childbearing continuum, so the stages of pregnancy, how things change, the role of the midwife. So that's kind of first year. And first year, I think everyone's really excited. It's quite a nice year. Second year, it amps up a slight bit, but only to the extent that it's where we start to introduce complexities and the more complex elements of pregnancy, but also of society. So we have my module, which obviously I'll say is the best module in the curriculum, which is women's lives, which is all to do with women's health, public health. But there's also, now I'm going to go blank, labour and postnatal, which is all to do with additional care needs in the labour and postnatal period, pre-existing and additional care, which is all to do with people who are entering the pregnancy with medical conditions anyway, and actually the impact of that on pregnancy, on their health. So that might be someone who's, for instance, diabetic, and then what that means for pregnancy. Skills research. So that's a really good module, because actually some students will actually have done a degree before who've come onto the midwifery programme, and that could be anything. I've had people come with the dancing degree, but I've had people come with biology degrees, complete mix of experience. And that module gets you to practice your understanding of qualitative, quantitative research, but also like systematic literature reviews, everything fundamentally, the principles of research. And a lot of people use that as a stepping stone onto their dissertation. So it helps kind of embed that before they go into their dissertation. And actually it gives you a chance to kind of start searching and thinking about it before you get there. So that does help with the stress in third year a little bit. And then obviously you're still doing all of your clinical practice at the same time. So you've got that ongoing, and that really helps consolidate a lot of your learning. And by first and second year, you've pretty much covered most of the content, haven't you? Because third year is our consolidation year. So our modules are very much aligned to qualifying and knowledge checking, building on what you already know. So your module, optimising, is in third year, which Emily will say is the best module, because we're all Emily, it is a brilliant module though. You can explain what that is.
So it's called Optimising Normal Physiological Processes. So the role of the midwife is to promote physiological processes. So we, refer when there's deviations, but essentially we're trying to optimise health, optimise outcomes. Midwives save lives. We are superheroes. I don't know if you know that.
You do have a little cape.
But yeah, we have a little cape. So it's building on the foundations that they learned in the first year, but also then started thinking critically about that, because the scope of midwifery has changed. Well, the scope of how women are birthing has changed. There was a real kind of push to for safety in making sure that women and babies are safe. But with that, unfortunately, came with a rise of intervention, and a lot of those interventions were unwarranted, and a lot of women didn't want them, and so we're at a bit of a crisis point with midwifery, because we've got a large proportion of women who have come away from their birth feeling dissatisfied or have some form of trauma, whether that be physical or emotional trauma, and midwifery is really kind of the antidote for a lot of those things, the problems that we're facing in maternity services in the UK. And it's about looking at the evidence critically to be able for women to make informed decisions about their care, so that they hopefully can walk away feeling empowered, because that has massive implications for health, not just for the mum, but for children and generations. The rising problems that we're having, some of behavioural issues in schools and things like that, are a knock-on effect on the way that we're birthing. And so it's massive. It's got such and so optimising really kind of cements that for the students.
And you can see why people leave feeling quite empowered after that module, because it's an interesting module and very thought-provoking. It's a lot of seminars, isn't there? So the discussions,
very student-led.
And there's also obviously the dissertation, there's the final skills, and future midwife, which is our module, which I was going to forget about. But future midwife is the module which is very much prepping them for qualification. It's prepping them for having their PIN and being a registrant, and actually what their role is going to be. But it's also includes things with careers. So the assessment itself is actually an interview to practice for when they go out and do their real life interviews. So it's an authentic assessment with that in mind. And it's usually really good, isn't it?
they do find it obviously stressful, but then they've kind of, I don't think they appreciate it until they then have an interview and realise, this has been really good to practice that. And it kind of builds on the end of the second year. They do an emergency OSCE, and we kind of go over that again. So it kind of scaffolds that bit of learning. So then there's it kind of brings
it all brings it together for that kind of towards the end. And I think when you get to third year, what it did for me, and I think all the students say the same thing, is that when you get to the end of your course, sometime in third year everything just clicks, because you've had all that grounding and then that consolidation year, which means you suddenly go, oh, I know what I'm doing. So although it's very daunting at the beginning of the course, because you think, how am I ever going to be ready? It's a 3-year course, and you completely, I think you change a lot as a person, and you become, it's a very empowering course. It's very women-centred, people-centred. I think it's very good at developing you as a person, not just as a midwife, if you want to go into other things. And we have people, I don't think we have any set one group of people, do we? It's very diverse in terms of age. People think, do I have to have had children to be a midwife? And actually a lot of us haven't got children before. You did your training before you had children. I did mine, like a lot of people do. And it does, but we also have people who've come from their own experiences that meant that they want to be a midwife. Then we've also got, it's just a huge variety, and actually everyone has very unique and different reasons for wanting to go into midwifery. But equally, it can stem into other things, which I presume we'll talk about later, so I'm not going to waffle on too much.
Absolutely. It sounds like a really special cohort that you have, and really unique as well. Can I ask, in terms of the shortened course, do you have a dissertation module as well, and how will that work for students?
Yeah, so they don't, like the long course, they have research methods at the end of their second year. They don't for that's the only kind of difference. They don't for the shortened course, because we've assumed that they've got some prior knowledge around research, but some of them haven't, because they've done their diploma. But they are encouraged to do a research project. So they can choose a literature review, but we're encouraging them to do their own project as well. So they'll do a primary piece of research, which they can on the long, but
they can.
So far we've not had anyone do it.
But that's interesting, because I think primary research for me was easier than doing easier, that's not the right word, because it wasn't easy, but you get very invested in it. It's very interesting.
But they've been more likely to say yes, because they've had that grounding in their previous degree as a nurse. So they still have to do a dissertation, but we've now got our second person doing primary research. So it's really exciting that someone's actually doing it,
So in terms of, when they're doing their theoretical modules, from when they start going through, how can they expect to be assessed in terms of coursework, presentations, exams maybe?
It's a complete mix, isn't it? So we utilise everyone learns in different ways and everyone assesses in different ways. So we use a combination of, we do exams, written exams, some essays, some oral exams where you come in and just talk, some presentations, some OSCEs, which are like where you come in and given a scenario and you have to respond to it. A podcast.
Yeah.
There's a podcast.
Yeah. Video
assessment.
Yeah, our interview.
Yeah.
So it's a real method, and we are revalidating our programme, and it will be more, like you talked about, authentic assessments. That's the direction where we're going, where with kind of our challenges around AI and things like that, we are going to make it more authentic, so more kind of real life scenarios and less about academic writing. We'll still have essays for dissertation and things like that, but there is a real mixture of it. So every year you probably only have maybe 1 or 2 written pieces, and the rest are different formats. And they all relate to the standards of proficiency for midwives, so they're not ones that we've just made up for the fun of it. They all kind of align with them being registered professionals at the end of it.
So in terms of the placements, where can they expect to be going? Is there different hospitals that they go to?
So there are hospitals, and there are hospitals. You're allocated a hospital for 3 years, although our long course, and it's just the long, isn't it? We'll be doing a placement in another hospital.
The long will do a 6 week, and the short will only do 2.
Yeah, that was it. So the way the programs have to work is you have to do a placement in another hospital. So although you'll be allocated one for 3 years, you will have to do a short placement somewhere else, like a placement block of about 6 weeks. But that's good because it will show you all the hospitals are very different, their management is very different, the policies, everything. So it will give you a bit of a way of looking at it and experiencing it. So we've got, I think at the minute, we work with Cambridge, Ipswich, Colchester, James Paget, West Suffolk at the minute, aren't we? So they're the hospitals that we're working with at the minute. When you're in the hospital though, although people often think maternity is just delivering babies, it's not. So that's one of the placements you might go to. So you might be on a delivery unit or a birthing centre, whether that's in the hospital or a standalone centre. But you'll also work on a postnatal ward, antenatal ward, in community. You'll also have what we call spoke weeks and work with other professionals. So that might be working in neonatal unit, or it might be working in ITU or some form of women's health. What other placements is that?
You can go. There's some trusts that go to A&E and breast clinics, fertility,
fetal medicine,
sexual health,
fetal medicine,
health visiting.
Health visiting, do a placement with. Some of our trusts, you can do a placement with the private midwives, so they work in a completely different model of care to the NHS. So there are options to do that, and all of our students on the long course get an elective, which is. There's a 3-week window of the year where they can go and apply. They can basically have to contact whoever they want to work with, and they can go and work with them. So we've had students go all over the place. I think historically we've had people go to loads of different trusts. We've had people go abroad.
I went to Thailand.
You went to Thailand.
Yeah.
Nice.
So people go everywhere. So it's very much an opportunity, and it doesn't necessarily have to be specific to midwifery. It could sort of women's health kind of is what you'd expect. But there's loads of different angles that could be. I've had people asked to go to work with domestic abuse charities and things like that, all sorts of different, just to kind of expand their experience and their understanding, but also a way of, maybe it's somewhere you'd want to consider working. It can be quite a good way of doing that if you're interested in working in a specific area.
Building on that, what kind of areas of midwifery can you specialise in, upon graduation and focusing in on those?
It's a lot bigger than you think it is. Well, not you.
I can imagine.
Not specifically anyone who applies to midwifery. Because I remember thinking, I was probably a bit naive when I first started. I didn't really realise how many roles there were. But why didn't you say what you've done? Should we say what we've done?
Yeah,
because that'd be a good way of explaining.
Yeah. So it opens up so many doors. You do have to have your initial preceptorship period, which is usually between 6 months to a year, to then progress to a band 6, which essentially means that you're kind of doing all of the skills that you need to be working independently. So things like suturing and cannulation and things like that. So I did my preceptorship. I then went travelling for a little bit. I was going to go and work in Australia and New Zealand, but I came back. And then I've been predominantly working on a birthing unit / delivery unit. Then I had some time in the community for a couple of years. Then I had some babies myself, and then I came back as a practice development midwife we coordinate all staff training and development, so thinking about career progression and training and support and preceptorships. And then I became more like a project lead of certain projects, and then I went to a ward lead, so I managed a birthing unit for a couple of years. Then COVID happened and I went back onto the shop floor and worked back in the delivery suite, and then I came here 3 and a bit years ago. Done my masters, did my teacher training, and hopefully doing PhD next year.
Wow,
ooh,
very
exciting.
So that's just Emily's career. So that's loads of different jobs that you can do. So my one, I did my preceptorship, and then I like studying. So as soon as I finished my preceptorship, I wanted to do a master's. I thought I'd have time away and realised I didn't want time away. And so I did my master's part-time, but while working full-time clinically. Wow. So then that was a lot. I won't lie, that was a lot. Yeah. And then London as well. It was in London, so you had to commute to London 2 days a week and then go to work the rest of the days. But it was fine because I loved it. So then I did partway through that, I then got a job as a fetal surveillance midwife, which is someone there's a bundle called Saving Babies' Lives, and a part of that is to do with effective fetal monitoring. and in labour, antenatally, and all across the childbearing continuum. But it involved things like auditing, reviewing cases, training staff. So that was kind of my job. And then ended up in lecturing, did that part-time as well. So kind of did my master's whilst doing this and the other job, because again, I don't have any boundaries clearly. And then I came full-time here. But I also know loads of people who've done different things, and actually you can end up being a ward manager, but you can also specialise in specific roles. So my role was a specialised role, but there's things like safeguarding, smoking cessation, mental health.
Yeah, bereavement, diabetes, screening.
You can go into sonography.
Mental health, yeah, sonography. We've got, amongst the team, we've got Charlie, who is the sonographer midwife, so you can go and do a master's module to do sonography. We've got ones that are kind of trainers that do training for advanced neonatal life support. We've got
research midwives.
We've got Jane, who was a head of midwifery. We've got one. She also does legal work. She's like an expert witness for legal cases.
And you can go on to do further study. Like all of us have different masters as well. So my master's wasn't in midwifery; it was in public health. But that has some midwifery links, obviously, because midwifery in itself is a huge public health issue. So mine was in that, and then so you could go into a career in public health. We talked about health visiting, but also I know people who've gone to go work in vaccination centres and who've gone to work for town councils or the RCM and the NMC. There's not really, I think people think midwife, you have to be a midwife, but actually you could go straight from university to another. You have a degree, so you could go into something else. But equally, you can use your midwifery knowledge to then inform a lot of health-related roles as well. And neonatal nurse.
Yeah.
There we go.
And we've got Karen, who has done a lot of work for women with autism.
Mm-hmm.
She's written a book. She's written stuff for the Royal College of Midwives as helping to support students and helping support women. So she's written kind of toolkits for people. So yeah, it really does open up a lot of doors, and I think that's the kind of beauty about midwifery. It is not a predictable kind of job. You know, even on the when you're working on the birthing unit, you don't know what's going to walk through the doors. You don't know who. There is a little bit of like communities, a bit more kind of routine. And you work with the GPs and you kind of do your clinics, do your visits 9 to 5. But working in the birthing unit is like working in a little mini A&E, because it's just, you'll
constant.
Be... One day you might not have anything, and next day you've got a set of twins, breach, an emergency, a home birth. There's lots going on. Yeah. But so it's we love it. We love midwifery. We think it's a great...
I think it's an amazing career for anyone, particularly if you like working with people, because of any form. And actually, I think the degree in itself I think you change, like I said, you change so much. Like, I'm not the same person I was when I did my training. You grow a lot. I think education is really good for making you grow and change as a person anyway, though, because it makes you think through a more critical lens, perhaps.
Yeah. And our employability rate for University of Suffolk is really good. About 98% of our graduates are employed in the 12 months after qualifying. Like anything in the NHS, it can be challenging. Like, we've got a bit of a challenging time at the moment in certain trusts around employment and stuff, but
it's such a change.
We have it every year, and then literally within kind of 24 hours it looks completely different. So most of our graduates who are coming up to finishing have got jobs kind of guaranteed with the trusts that you're working with, but we can't always guarantee that when we're recruiting.
And hopefully, within the first few months, a year, there's definitely options in that time frame.
You can work as, usually most trusts let you then work as a maternity care assistant until there's jobs that come up. And you had the same thing when you were I had the same when I was qualifying.
We were talking about it the other day.
Within a couple of weeks we all got jobs. So.
Yeah.
Will happen eventually. We just have to keep reassuring people that it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
So at this university, we have access to the wonderful health and wellbeing building. So what sort of specialist facilities can students expect to have when they're studying?
We talked about this earlier.
We talked about what we've got. So we've got a we do a lot of shared stuff with the nurses. So we've got 2 6-bed hospital bays that are set up freakishly like a hospital. You go in there and you're like, oh, feel like you're on shift. So there's monitoring. There's patients that are can talk back. You can do their blood pressure. You can do lots with them. You can cannulate, catheterize. You can intubate. You can do all sorts. We also have lots of birthing models. We have a birthing mama and a birthing baby. So she has a mechanics inside that can bleed, that can birth, that can have complications. She can talk. We can do all of those other stuff with her as well. And a baby who, because now part of our programme, midwives also come out at the end of it being NIPE practitioners, which is newborn physical examination practitioners, which historically was done by the GP or a doctor, but as midwives we're starting to take on that role. So now we have a little baby that we can put it into different heart rhythms, and so we can detect murmurs and it can breathe, and we do its rests and pulse, and so lots and lots of technical
and there's those screens, isn't there, the virtual reality screen.
We've also got immersion suites.
That's it.
That they are set up like a delivery ward, and it has noises around to try and replicate real life. We're also very creative with an orange and sometimes a condom full of water to replicate the bag of waters to break through. So it's not sometimes all technical.
No, sometimes it's very.
We've got suturing this week and we use an ox tongue.
Yeah, they suture ox tongues.
Yeah, so it's not always technical stuff. Yeah. But no, it is good. We've got our own birthing suite, which has got a birthing pool. It's a blow-up one, but it's a birthing pool. We've got birthing equipment.
Yeah, we have loads of equipment that we can bring out for individual sessions. Like we weren't with some of the new first years before we've had. We've made them wear the pregnancy bump to show you how it feels, and the moving around and things. On some of those, actually, you can deliver a baby from, so you can practice getting in all sorts of positions and things. So there is loads. I think there's loads. Sometimes even we don't know it exists, and then we find it. We go, that would be really good. Yeah,
that's fantastic. In terms of the course itself, what makes it so attractive? Compared to other institutions,
apart from us,
apart from the amazing lecturers we get to speak with, what else is there?
I think the one thing that we do have really nailed down is probably, as a course team, we are I think we are a very compassionate course team, and I think there's a lot of student support, and I think that we probably, hopefully, do very well. I know I like to think we're very approachable, and one of the feedback is that we're an approachable team, and we're good at providing that kind of, and we also know everyone. Like I remember starting, I thought I wouldn't remember everyone's names, but I do actually know all of the students by name.
I think that's the thing, like
it's slightly smaller.
Yeah, we are a smaller institution, so we do have a really reciprocal relationship with our students because we all know them, they know us. We know them by name, we know a bit about their family and their background. Whereas when it's, in other areas, you can triple the size of the cohorts and they don't have that same, obviously they have that relationship with their personal like coach or tutor, but not with the wider team. So I think that's a big thing for us. But I think that we're a very inclusive university, and I think we really are mindful of that to make all of our teaching as inclusive as possible. We've got a lot of diversity within the team with our own kind of neurodiversity, and I think that makes us also look at like the students' experience through a different lens and help to adjust to those needs. So I think they're the two biggest selling points. I think if you want something where you feel a sense of belonging, that people genuinely care about you, that you've got a good support network, then I think this is a good university for that.
Yeah.
And then also building on that, in terms of you mentioned about the personal academic coaches, what other support provisions are available to students? I know we have disability and wellbeing services as well.
There are a lot. That's why I'm thinking.
So our personal academic coaches, they follow our students for the full 3 years or 2 years for the short course. And then every year they have an academic assessor, which is to help to support them in practice. that changes every year. So that's their kind of go-to in like progression in placement, but also if they've had maybe a particularly challenging time in placement and they just want to kind of talk it through and debrief, they can come to there. We also have link lecturers for each site that we have. Usually there's one or two of us, and we go and visit the sites on a regular basis. Usually every kind of three weeks there'll be one of us coming in to see how everyone's getting on. And we also have professional midwifery advocates. So Jane is our professional midwifery advocate, so PMAs for short. And we kind of signpost students there to have kind of restorative conversations around either themselves going through challenging times, or maybe they've had some challenges in practice, or whatever it might be. And they can have restorative conversations. It's a bit similar to kind of coaching, but kind of really empowering students to be able to find answers to their own problems rather than us just being like, there, I'm really sorry. It's about kind of really empowering them to say, oh, no, I can overcome these myself. And so we've got that as well as all of the wider, obviously, services we have within the team. We have PEFs
in practice. So your practice education facilitator, who's the person who is like the person who works at the trust and is our link for kind of supporting students. So they're there. You've got your module leads, so the person actually running the module at that given time is also quite available to people. But we also have a lot of wider services that we obviously refer to student support and the disability and wellbeing, whether that might be for reasonable adjustments, booking with a disability advisor, or actually any of the wider signposting that we have to provide. But I was thinking as well, in terms of people with medical conditions, or also just sometimes even like a period of illness, we have our occupational health provider as well, who we refer to ensure that they're supported in practice. So for instance, there might be something that's come up in your life, and for a period of time you might need to come off nights, or you might need staggered shifts. Those are the sort of things we can refer people to in order to kind of help facilitate their attendance in practice, rather than them doing loads of nights or day, night, or whatever.
We've also set up for the last couple of years peer mentoring.
Oh yes.
So we allocate a first year, a second year student, usually try and do it at the same base site, so they can, if they're working on shift, to be like, then they can support them. So we get them to kind of meet each other in the first couple of weeks in induction week and say, oh, this is your peer mentor. They're there just to share their lived experience of being, obviously we can support them as students, and we've had our own lived experience as a student, but it's those that have had, I've done that assessment a few months ago, this is what I've learned, this is how I kind of, some tips and stuff to get them through. And some people utilise it a lot, where they've set up a little WhatsApp group and they chat regularly. Some don't utilise it at all. Yeah. But we've then got opportunities for those. We've kind of, we've tried to sell it as a bit of a career opportunity, because we've obviously at the uni, you've got the peer mentoring, the formal kind of peer mentoring. If they've enjoyed doing that much, so, encourage them to be a peer mentor, and how good that, looks for their CV, and then thinking about them being a practice assessor when they are then qualified. They've got those kind of core skills to help them. So that's been really helpful for the students who've utilised it.
Library learning services.
Yeah, they're
and
really,
the careers
really good.
team.
Yeah.
I think there is actually support for most things that you could need. It's just actually accessing them. So if we're quite good at signposting, I think, as well, to the right service if people disclose anything. But yeah, I think it is all there. It's just whether you want, the willingness to engage.
And the short course, they get a line manager, because they're still employees. They have a line manager in the trust as well that they can get support from as well. So yeah, lots. Yeah.
Great.
A lot available.
Yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
And I think the thing that works really well is we are a very diverse team in terms of who we are and what experience we bring. So sometimes you'll find someone that you connect with a bit more, that you might feel more comfortable disclosing certain things with, and all of us would be open to. We're not going to say you're not my pack, you can't come to me. We're very good at kind of navigating that conversation as it comes and supporting individuals on an individual basis.
Fantastic. Looking back to the very beginning of the student journey, do you have any advice for students who are submitting their application for the midwifery course, be it the long one or the short one?
You go first this time.
Thank you. And my biggest piece of advice would be to make sure you understand the role of the midwife and you look a bit into it first, because there's a lot of media out there about midwifery, and actually we know about media, there's certain perceptions of it that depending on what you're watching. So I always think it's worth looking at the main kind of the NMC, the RCM, but also maybe any news articles or recent journal articles or reports into midwifery, just so you can come informed, because I think it's a brilliant career. Like any career, there are issues with working in there's always issues wherever you go, whatever you do. I don't think there's a job where there's not some form of political thing going on. But I think coming into it with the knowledge and your expectations and your understanding of what working in the NHS is like. For instance, you don't have to work in the NHS as a midwife. There are other options, but coming into it with kind of a bit of an open mind. And I think that's probably my best piece of advice, and a willingness to learn and kind of challenge your own views and perceptions, because you do learn things that will challenge and confront maybe some pre-existing beliefs that you might already have.
Yeah, I think very similar to the shortened course. I think just having a really good understanding of what we are in a unique profession, because we have got autonomy where we can practice independently, but that comes with it's a blessing and also a big responsibility. So we kind of sit more within a kind of doctor role, but we're not quite a doctor. So it's that understanding of what that kind of brings to the table and what the role is. But I think particularly for the shortened course and their own kind of feedback from their lived experience, is that it's a big jump, kind of the expectations academically, that they going straight into level 5, and level 5 has been really different from what they'd experienced before at level 5, because of that autonomy. We have to really critically think about everything. So when we're given informed choice, we have to be able to look at research and be able to understand the limitations of that research, what maybe makes us able to say, well, this is really strong evidence, have a little look at this is strong evidence, this is what the guidelines say. So that is quite a big leap from nursing, where they may have not had to think as critically before, and that lead to a lot of students feeling they're struggling academically to meet those expectations. So try and access, where possible, some of the Brightspace resources for like academic skills and stuff as early as possible, but in the application phase, focusing on like some of the key reports around, because we've got a lot in the media at the moment, not all positive, but it gives you a little idea of kind of the challenges, so you are going in there not completely blind.
Brilliant. Some great advice. So we know that one of the ways that students like to learn more about courses is going to open days, and I'm sure you're able to show them your facilities, the health and wellbeing building. What are sort of some of the key questions that prospective students ask, and maybe some of the answers that you tend to give?
So we've recently changed the open day. Before you had to pin down what you wanted to do, who you wanted to talk to, but now it's a bit more fluid. So you come in the idea of like, I think I want to do something in health, I'm going to go listen maybe to the nurses in the child house, whereas before they only came and saw you talk. And so now the kind of we're getting changes in the kind of questions that we're being asked, because it's more open, and that kind of feeds into how we've made changes for the interview. Historically, you only interviewed for midwifery, but now we've opened it up so that you're interviewing. You obviously know you've got your preference, but you can interview, and if you're not successful in midwifery, you then can go directly into nursing or child house, because it's more of a generic interview process, isn't it? So the questions have changed, but I think the things are usually like shift patterns. What shifts am I going to be working? Where am I going to be working? We give a little overview of the kind of blocks where they're going to be in terms of like theory, when they're going to get holidays.
Yeah, that's
those kind of things.
When's my annual leave?
They're not like other students. They don't have like the whole of the summer off. They only get 7 weeks holiday in the whole of the academic year.
Although there's clinical recovery,
there
so if you're on
is.
top of your hours and doing well, like on track with your Mora, there's an extra 3 weeks potentially up for grabs.
But
there.
if you're doing some courses, you're kind of off from June, aren't you?
Yeah,
but
I know.
Ours are like
I know.
literally
I
working.
do think that is a big question, and I think it can be particularly challenging. I personally experienced I did mine when I was 18. So a lot of people go to university, don't they? And they have this. I remember all my friends had months off for summer, and they had
10 hours of lectures.
10 hours of lectures a week, and then they were having, partying every night. But I knew that wasn't for me. So it's a very different way of doing a course, but it's because it's a professional vocation at the end, isn't it? It's a job, and it's very much a blend of working and a degree at the same time. But we do have holidays, and we have a midwifery society, which is very popular.
Little plug for them.
Little plug. Exactly.
They are really good. They're great.
And we do the conference every year, and there is stuff for people to do. But yeah, it's a different sort of degree to others.
Have you had any random questions that you get quite regularly?
Most of mine relate to the hospitals and shifts, to be honest, and I think that's because it's a bit daunting if you're going from the 9 to 5 to go to shift work, or if you're going from, some of our students won't have ever had a job before, so it's kind of understanding of that. And I think actually there is a degree of flexibility. If you've got a wedding or you've got a holiday, not necessarily like a week-long holiday, because you can't do that during practice, but if you've got a weekend where you're going away, they are quite good at accommodating if they know in advance. So it's not rigid, but it is based on capacity. So we always say it's a 24-hour service, 7 days a week. So you will be working a range of shift patterns generally.
Absolutely. That's really fantastic to hear about how going from an open day, through the application process, and then for the successful applicants, is there any advice that you would give to them as they prepare for their courses and prepare to enter study or re-enter in some cases for the short course?
For the long course, I always think that there's a lot of student midwife forums, aren't there? And there's a lot of advice out there, and a lot of it involves buying a lot of things. And I personally don't think you should buy a lot of things from it. I did. I was one of those people who was on all the forums and bought myself everything and then had debt to prove it. But I don't think you actually need any of those things. I mean, we have brilliant use of online sources at the university, so most of our books are online or in the library, so you don't really need to buy any of those. I think firstly, I always think the best thing to do is probably enjoy your period of time before starting, because it's going to be a different pace when you start. And although there are periods that are quieter, when you've done your exams, you maybe got Christmas holiday or something, but it's an intense course. So having a nice period of time, whether that's with your family or partner, or just generally going away and doing nice things, or just lying down vertically for a period of time, that's a really good thing to do before you start sometimes. And maybe some reading around, some kind of familiarising yourself, some looking at how you're going to get to placement, like looking at your strategising and your planning for what you're going to do when you're in placement, or how you're going to get to uni, kind of familiarising yourself with that sort of thing, I think is more key than anything, because the whole point of the course is to teach you everything and to signpost you to the sources. So I don't think you need to do loads and loads, but I do think kind of preparing yourself a bit in that regard and doing a bit of reading around it and keeping up to date with current affairs related to midwifery is good.
And there's loads of stuff on as soon as they are through that admissions part, there's so much stuff that they can do on Brightspace. I think that will help them as well. That's a really nice. And then
we send out a reading list as well. So there is a reading list that we kind of say, if you would like to prepare, then have a read of these. And
we do for the long course, and we're going to do it for the short, when we get a better recruitment process this year. We have a what do we call it? Like a little open. What do we call it? They kind of.
I don't know. What wait, describe.
We get them in a couple of.
Weeks. A pre-course day.
Pre-course day.
Pre-course day.
Remember the word.
Yeah.
So I think my only advice would be
to go to the pre-course day.
Go to the pre-course day, because you'll meet all of your cohort, and to start building those relationships early, swap numbers, set up your own little WhatsApp group, and start because there's nothing worse than you start on a course, you're nervous about starting a course, but you're worried about who am I going to talk to, who am I going to sit next to. But if you can try and go to those, it's really nice, because actually a lot of them they fit in really quickly, don't they, in terms of
usually they've already met before the pre-course day as well. I have no idea that underground networks they are all part of, but they all seem to know each other by the time.
It's the forums,
They all kind of get to know each other that way before. And then they're adding each other to these chats and things.
It's really nice because I'll have it when someone's given me a book and like, oh, can you give this to such and such?
Yeah.
And they've kind of been they swap books and
I think peer support
really
is
nice.
such a big thing for this course, because they're as much as family and people, if you've not done the degree, it's really difficult to necessarily understand the issues that not necessarily issues, but the experiences you might have on the course. So actually your peers are really valuable.
Yeah, that's great. So we talked about, students when they've made their application, so in terms of when they actually start, have you got any key advice for them to get the most out of their course and so they're best prepared when they go into practice?
I think engagement is the biggest thing. I think if you turn up, for one thing, every day to the lectures and you're reading the resources that are provided and you're, accessing everything that you're given and keeping on top of it, then you're far better equipped for when you go out into practice. And it's better to kind of stay on track throughout than to try and be playing a game of catch up at any point. So that would be my best piece of advice, probably.
I think for me, I think that a lot of the students find it quite overwhelming when they see things as a whole, when they start to think, oh God, I've got to go into place, and I've also got to write a 2,000 word essay, and I've got this deadline and this, and oh my God, I'm really nervous about my first day. So trying to try and take a big task and make it into tiny little micro tasks, and that way you can form these habits where it then feels quite easy to do a big thing like 2,000 word essay. But when you see it as everything, and we get that a lot when people do
the Mora.
The Mora, and it's so thick and it's like 300 pages.
But it's for 3 years. But it's breaking it down.
Yeah, so it's just trying to, if you get any kind of task, it's breaking that down into manageable things. Like, okay, well, for 10 minutes I'm going to read half a chapter, or and then the next day I might do a podcast and maybe write a couple of 100 words. And if you break it down into kind of small daily tasks, it doesn't feel so overwhelming and consuming to do this massive task. And I think managing stress is the biggest thing, because when we're stressed, you don't have the capacity in your brain to be creative or to sometimes even learn, because you're so stressed. So managing your stress and breaking things down into little tasks is probably my top tip. But that was only because I learnt the hard way. It's taken years.
I think
and
you do
years
have to break it down
though,
because I think there's a propensity to start a course and think you need to know everything now, but actually it's 3 years, so you don't need to know everything now. You're not meant to.
No, and sadly with midwifery, the learning doesn't stop as soon as you're qualified. It's having to sit comfortably in that feeling of I don't know, but I know that I can ask and I feel comfortable and safe to ask, because it's just forever changing, forever growing, new evidence emerging all the time. So you never get to that point. And I've been a midwife now for nearly 18 years and I haven't got to the point where I can say I know everything. It's a dangerous place to be. So you just have to sit comfortably and then I'm a learner, I'm still learning, be patient with yourself.
That's very wise.
That's good. Before we move on and ask some questions about you guys and your background and what you like about the role, is there anything else you would like to mention about the course that we haven't said already?
I think the thing is, with midwifery, it is a very emotive profession, and like Rachel said before, some people go into that profession because of their own personal experience. And I think it's just being having those tools in your toolkit to be able to be aware that there are things that may be quite challenging that might come up. I mean, it's a kind of concept of like when you know so much more, you're like, oh God, if I would have known that then, I would have made different decisions.
Yeah.
So it's particularly those that have had children first, have maybe come into midwifery either because they've had a positive experience, or maybe because they had a not very particularly positive experience, how it might open up some challenges. So I think it's just making sure you've come to the course, whatever your previous background, with your own tools of being able to deal with stress and particularly triggering kind of conversations, because we talk about domestic violence, sexual violence, mental health,
so it
even things like breastfeeding. If you haven't had the right information and maybe you chose to to artificially bottle feed, and then you're like, oh God, if I known that then, I wouldn't have made those decisions. You know, it can just open up a lot of. It's a very emotive
for anyone as well. I tend to find that it's sometimes it's something that someone hasn't thought about for years, and then you get in a room, and then we're like, oh, let's talk about it, and it can be quite. But I also think I've had a lot of people historically then flip it and find it quite empowering, that knowledge, and it can help inform the care they provide to other people. Definitely. So I think that's
just have some tools to be able to manage those.
But
those
you've
challenges.
Suffolk Mind.
Yeah, so we've been working in partnership with Suffolk Mind. We won a grant last year, and so we're providing some essential skills for students to have those additional kind of tools in their toolkit, because I think when you are in that kind of stress continuum, you kind of blame it on a lot of it on the course, that the course is causing a lot of stress, and actually what Suffolk Mind kind of get you to do is look at your own basic needs, which there are 12 of them apparently, and kind of listing like, okay, well, what are you doing to meet that need, and actually when you go through it, you're like, oh, well, no wonder I'm finding this course stressful, because I'm not sleeping properly, I'm not exercising, I have no privacy, and you know, you go through and you think, oh, actually it's these things, as well as obviously this is, you know, stress, but it's making sure that you're keeping your cup full of good things, because if your cup is empty, you can't then deal with another stress, because it makes you feel like completely overwhelmed. So that's been really helpful. We're now doing it for the second years. We've had the shorter course and the long course, and the third years do it, and they've loved it, and they thought it was really, really helpful. So yeah, prepare for some stress. That's a big tip,
but manageable stress. And I think if you know, people get through it. So if you know, all of us on the team have done it before, like everyone, people have got out through the other side, so it's a manageable stress. But there are, I think, like anything, there's peaks and troughs, aren't there? And it also depends, it's 3 years of your life, things happen in 3 years of anyone's lives, so but there is support to help you through those things that are happening, whatever that might be. And it doesn't need to be us as the course team, it can be any of the wider university services, or actually even wider than that potentially.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice for students, I think, present or, you know, students who are coming to the university in the future. Thinking about the University of Suffolk, what was it that attracted you both to the university? What made you choose to join Suffolk and lecture here?
Do you want to go first?
Can do. So I actually trained here myself when it was Suffolk College.
Oh, wonderful.
Many moons ago, 2004. And Fiona, who was the course lead, is still here, and so knew her really, really well. And I just knew it's always been a really, really inclusive school. I really struggled academically, and I wonder every day how I've got to this point where I'm now like
that's imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
everyone has it.
But yeah, I really, really struggled. I kind of got halfway through it was a diploma then, halfway through my diploma, and I was referring every single essay, but I was doing really well in practice, thank goodness, but I was really, really struggling. And it was the university that helped me through that. That went through, you know, reasonable adjustments, getting assessing, realised, and I use this analogy a lot, like I was trying to climb Everest with just a bum bag, and actually I needed like a suitcase and a team of people and snacks and everything to get me through. Until I got that help, I was going to keep, you know, I probably was going to step off, and I don't know where I would have been. So I knew that the university was so good. They really, really helped, and I thought, as someone with like ADHD and dyslexia, I knew I would be embraced as a team member, and not like, you know, you think of academics, you think they're on a pedestal, but I knew that actually the university really value that kind of lived experience. And and I knew some of the team, and I knew it was a really good place to work. So that's what drew me into, and yeah, loved it ever since.
I feel like yours is a bit more mine wasn't on purpose, I can't lie to you. I think there's, because I'm not going to make it up, I was doing my masters, and I obviously love education and studying myself, so I just got talking to someone who talked about, oh, you'd be really good in, you know, lecturing, And then that kind of, I knew there were some jobs opening, and then applied.
And here you are.
And here I am. But so I applied to make, because that doesn't sound brilliant, but it does become better. I applied initially on 2 days a week because I just thought it would be good experience. And then I did a year, 2 days a week, whilst working my other job. And whilst I was here, I fell in love with this job. And the reason I fell in love with it was firstly the course team. Everyone, I don't know why I'm feeling a bit emotional. The course team, oh God, don't go. The course team and all the people I work with made it really valuable. See, everyone gets really emotional in midwifery. I don't know why. I never used to cry.
Born a special way.
I don't know. Yeah, the course team that I worked with, I loved, and I valued them so much as colleagues, but also as midwives in their profession. And I love the students. Yeah. The things I loved in my job about being women-centred and developing relationships and watching someone go through their journey, we get that, but we get it for 3 years. So we don't just get the 9 months, we get 3 years. And genuinely, when they graduate,
we are wrecked.
We're gone. Because I feel like we invest so much into supporting them. They're like, you do, you really do, and you really care about them. And by the time, you know how much they might have encountered on the course, and you know what's gone on in their personal lives, and you know how hard they've worked to get there. And so it's really amazing to watch them finally graduate. And I can't, that buzz that you get from that, for me, was so good that I was like, I just want to come full time. So although my initial thing wasn't 100%, I know this is what I want. And if you'd have asked me when I qualified, I would never have said lecturing, not for any reason other than probably that I didn't think it was something that I could do. I don't know. But because when I ended up starting in it, I thought I can't see myself doing anything else. And that, you know, we all love our jobs.
Yeah, we are really lucky because, again, because we are smaller, we build those relationships. So we love graduation. It's like our best time of the year. And we've got our Leavers event this
Friday.
Week, and when we keep talking
I
about
already
it,
get emotional every time, but it's because you really care, and you get so proud of them, and so like I admire them all so much that it's just such a lovely day.
It is. We get a lot back from them. I think that's the thing, and that's what keeps us like loving the job as much as we do. We're really keen, you know. We're always all the time kind of trying to make it better. But we get so much out of them in the same way
they
how
we
love
our cup.
Yeah, they do fill our cup.
That's really lovely.
Yeah.
I feel like the whole podcast episode is just going to be, it's so lovely. Your relationship with the students and
we are lucky.
And each other.
And each other. Yeah.
If you had to choose, what would be the favourite part of your job? What's the
that's
the
really
best
difficult.
bit?
I think our own modules, we get a lot out of it because we're really lucky as a team. We've picked modules that suit our own passions, our little mini passion projects, and you for public health and women's lives, you really get a lot out of that. And I do for optimising, like it does fill our cup because we get to do the two things we love most about being a midwife and the most what we enjoy about being lecturers. And it's just seeing I kind of, only way I can describe it is when my children started first like eating proper food, the first time they had an orange, I was like, oh my God, can you imagine that first feeling when you it was the first time you have an orange and you're like, wow. And then I saw the world through their eyes of like, these are all new things, and it makes you kind of, it reinvigorates your own passion because you're like, oh, can you imagine that being the first time that you've told this information? And it just makes you see it through a different lens, and it does reignite my passion for.
I love our podcast.
Yeah,
I like doing that. I really like. I love teaching. Teaching is probably my favourite thing. Obviously, that is the best bit. But the other thing I really like is when you've built that. It is that when you've built that rapport and you watch them overcome something that you knew was going to be, I don't know, and you just feel like, oh.
Yeah, like we've just had our OSCEs a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, I know.
They were really, really, they were third years. They're really, really nervous. They know it's a big thing because it's kind of going to be whether they get to qualify on time and things like that. And so it was really and some of them were really, really struggling, and it holding back the emotions when they just smash it, and you're like, I can't tell you smashed it, but you smashed it to try and suck my teeth back in. It's just, that is so nice.
Oh no, that is. So several things, I would say, not just one thing, multiple things probably. But we do, like, teaching is my favourite bit, but I do, individual things with the students is really special as well. So I don't think I could pick one thing.
Yeah.
Really.
We are lucky.
Yeah.
To actually enjoy our jobs.
I know, I've never had that feeling. You know when you hate your job and you get up and you go, oh gosh, I have to go into work. I never get that feeling. Unless I'm ill, in which case, you're dragging yourself. You're like, oh, I need to come in. But other than that, I genuinely I look forward to work every day. Maybe that makes us really sad.
No, I don't think
we love our job.
Love your job. Yeah,
it's
good really thing. Lucky.
You spend more time in job than anywhere else, don't you?
Yeah.
So, sort of building on from that, have you got any moments from your time at the university that you're particularly proud of?
Oh God, lots. I think. Well, thinking recently, I had a student who emailed me. I put it in my validation.
Yes, you did.
Emailed me to say that she's coming up to the end, and we've now got to the point where this is our first cohort that we've
followed all the way through.
And she's a really strong student, but she had some real difficulties in her first year, and she wasn't my personal academic coach or anything, but just working with her a lot of like building her confidence back up and signposting her to the right people. And she sent me this lovely email, and I was just howling because it was just like just saying that she's got to this point where she feels, you could take on the world. She just feels so much she's got, she feels really empowered and stuff, and that was lovely. But we've been also really lucky this year because we got to go and teach in Mauritius for some time, and so that was really really lovely. That was really
and
good.
Some of the cards and little things that they've sent over, it's so lovely when you get something that like, or someone sends you an email and says how much it is, isn't it? You just feel really like proud of them, and then proud, you kind of absorb it a little bit. Obviously masters, we've both done our masters and finished that. And
what was your personal high since being here?
I don't know, I feel like there's been quite a lot. I don't know, that's really hard to answer.
Too many to count.
Too many.
That's good.
I just feel like it's really difficult to pick one thing.
I think we're only in that position because we have built those relationships, and we do genuinely care for them, and so we do get a lot of that out, and a lot of them do take the time to send a little card or a little
thank you and stuff. Email, which then we weep.
We're weepers.
I always said I never used to cry until this job, and then I did, but not at like work.
It's been with me. I'm known as
you rub off everyone. But
it's
it's probably when they do something amazing that you kind of get the pride through them. Like we've had some amazing things from the students in terms of what they've gone on to do or what they've done, which is really that's probably it. And graduation days, you're always like
we love it.
Really, really proud. Generally.
So we've got our final question now, which is our answer one, ask one. So what will happen is you're going to answer a question from previous guests. And
okay.
So the question we've got from our previous guest is, if you look back at your time as undergraduate students, was there a particular topic that you found the most interesting to study?
I'm going to say public health, but I know that that's probably, anyone who knows me will be like, fair. That public health for me, probably.
As an undergraduate, I mean, you have to remember that was like 20 years ago, and I cannot probably remember. But definitely going like in my masters, it was kind of it was similar to the optimizing module, which is kind of going back to understanding physiology, and we also did one on kind of complexities, but I chose to do again like something around physiology. So I love the brain, because midwives are actually
you're very good with your understanding of the brain.
We are superheroes, but we're also neurologists. So birth is all about the brain, and so if you understand the brain, you can understand birth. So it was kind of understanding that was a bit of a turning point in my career of like, oh my god, it was like a light bulb moment of like, why didn't I not know this 20 years ago? That wasn't 20 years ago. But, at the time when I was doing it.
Yeah. No, we know what you mean.
Yeah.
Lovely.
I can't remember my
Do we have to come up with a question each?
Yeah, just as collectively, yeah.
What about, Emily? You're good at things like this. That's why I'm looking at you, begging.
Help. What fills your cup?
Lovely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very reflective.
But that needs to,
With explanation.
With context.
Yeah, we can give
Otherwise it's squash.
Yeah.
With context, that's it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. It's a
That
pleasure.
was such a wholesome episode. I really enjoyed it. It was amazing.
No, it's been great. Thank you.
So until next time, it's goodbye from Lily.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
And goodbye from me. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Student Experience podcast. If you'd like to be a future guest, email studentexperiencesteam@uos.ac.uk or follow the links to our application form through our Brightspace page. You can also reach out to us through our Instagram page @UOS_student experience.